Let's start with Merrick Garland. And really, or Terry McAuliffe's comments, parents have no right to say what have a say about their children's education. Why don't we just hand the kids over to the government, let them raise them, because apparently that's what they want.
Well, you know, in any crisis, someone's character is revealed, and COVID really has shown the character of the Democrats. They are authoritarians. They are jackbooted thugs. There is no decision about your life that they will not try to control, whether that is a vaccine mandate, regardless of your choices. Gavin Newsom trying to order every school kid in California to get a vaccine, regardless of their parents' wishes, or whether it comes to silencing free speech. You know, at the Attorney General's memorandum this week, he directed the FBI and the Department of Justice to go after parents who are going to school boards, who are expressing dismay that critical race theory, the toxic stew of lies that divides us based on race, that teaches kids that America is inherently racist, that all white people are racist, that seeks to turn us into hating each other on racial lines. Parents are understandably upset about that, and the Attorney General told the Department of Justice that those parents at school boards should be treated as threats and as domestic terrorists, and directed the FBI to use all the forces of the federal government against them. Today, and you put up just a minute ago the hearing with the head of the Civil Rights Division of the Department of Justice, I asked her, I said, do you really think parents at school boards are domestic terrorists? She refused to answer the question. I said, well, do they have any civil rights to express their dismay to their elected officials? The head of the Civil Rights Division refused to answer it. Then I asked her, Sean, I said, well, what about Antifa? What about Antifa terrorists that are rioting across the country? Are they domestic terrorists? She refused to answer that. I said, how about Black Lives Matter terrorists that are looting stores and firebombing police cars and murdering police officers? Can we agree that if you murder police officers, you're a domestic terrorist? She said, well, everybody's allowed to have a point of view. So the Biden Justice Department looks at terrorists who are murdering police officers and firebombing cities and says, we don't know if they're bad guys, but they look at moms at a PTA meeting and they say, yep, that is the threat in life. It's nuts.
It's madness. We're going to have a lot more. The great one, Mark Levin, will weigh in tonight. Senator, I want to ask you something here. I have very strong feelings. You tell me, correct me if I'm wrong, but I don't think any Republican was consulted in any way at all, never mind any meaningful way, on the $3.5 trillion in New Green Deal socialism. Now, to pay for that, the Democrats are trying to rely on Republicans to assist them in raising the debt ceiling, or else they won't have the money to spend on their socialism, which will destroy this great country. And I don't want a single Republican. I'm a conservative, as you know. I don't want a single Republican assisting them by raising the debt ceiling. And I heard Mitch McConnell might be opening the door to allow that to happen. That's not particularly pleasing to me, and that doesn't sound like a small government conservatism to me.
Yeah, look, you're preaching to the choir. I think it is a big, big mistake. As you remember, Sean, the first book I wrote was called A Time for Truth. And the opening chapter of A Time for Truth, the title of it was Mendacity. And it described the Senate Republican lunch where Mitch McConnell asked every Republican to unanimously consent to lower the threshold for the Democrats to raise the debt ceiling from 60 votes to 50 votes. And I raised my hand. I said, listen, there is no universe in which I can consent to that. It's dishonest to the men and women who elected us. There's nothing I've done in 9 years in the Senate that is more enraged leadership than that moment of objecting. And we're right back there again. Again, Republicans are being asked to consent to lower the threshold. And this is all because Chuck Schumer is playing political games. Right now, the Democrats have both houses of Congress and the White House. They can raise the debt ceiling, but Schumer doesn't want to, because if they raise it with just Democrat votes, then they actually have to be honest to the voters and say, yes, we're adding trillions in debts to our kids and grandkids. Instead, they want to play a game that forces Republicans to support their massive debt and their reckless spending. Schumer is the one who is threatening a default of the debt. Biden is the one who is threatening a default of the debt. That is reckless. We should never, ever, ever default on the debt. And by the way, for years, I've supported legislation called the Full Faith and Credit Act that would say under no circumstances would the United States ever default on its debt. If a debt ceiling isn't raised, we will continue to pay the interest on our debt, and it will be the big government left-wing spending programs that are cut instead. But the Democrats block it because they want to threaten a default on the debt to push through more spending programs.
All right, Senator, stand strong. The American people will stand behind you. Every conservative will, and most Republicans. Mitch McConnell, stand up as a conservative or let someone else lead. Thank you. When we come back, Biden's border crisis is worsening. Republican governors are taking matters into their own hands. Sarah Carter is at the border, Texas Governor Abbott, and then later at the end of the show, I have an announcement that I think you'll like. Straight ahead.